Today we are zooming along in our lessons and taking things to heart. And we've been talking about function, and now we're talking about uh, happiness as well. Today we're going to learn that they're both the same. So let's jump into lesson number 66. My happiness and my function are one. You have surely noticed an emphasis throughout our recent lessons on the connection between fulfilling your function and achieving happiness. This is because you do not really see the connection. Yet there is more than just a connection between them. They are the same. Their forms are different, but their content is completely one. The ego does constant battle with the Holy Spirit on the fundamental question of what your function is. So does it do constant battle with the Holy Spirit about what your happiness is. It is not a two-way battle. The ego attacks and the Holy Spirit does not respond. He knows what your function is. He knows that it is your happiness. Today we will try to go past this wholly meaningless battle and arrive at the truth about your function. We will not engage in senseless arguments about what it is. We will not become hopelessly involved in defining happiness and determining the means for achieving it. We will not indulge the ego by listening to its attacks on truth. We will merely be glad that we can find out what truth is. Our longer practice period today has as its purpose your acceptance of the fact that not only is there a very real connection between the function God gave you and your happiness, but that they are actually identical. God gives you only happiness. Therefore, the function he gave you must be happiness, even if it appears to be different. Today's exercises are an attempt to go beyond these differences in appearance and recognize a common content where it exists in truth. Begin the 10 to 15 minute practice period by reviewing these thoughts. God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me. Therefore, my function must be happiness. Try to see the logic in this sequence, even if you do not yet accept the conclusion. It is only if the first two thoughts are wrong that the conclusion could be false. Let us then think about the premises for a while as we are practicing. The first premise is that God gives you only happiness. This could be false, of course, but in order to be false, it is necessary to define God as something he is not. Love cannot give evil, and what is not happiness is evil. God cannot give what he does not have, and he cannot have what he is not. Unless God gives you only happiness, he must be evil. And it is this definition of him you are believing if you do not accept the first premise. The second premise is that God has given you your function. We have seen that there are only two parts of your mind. One is ruled by the ego and is made up of illusions. The other is the home of the Holy Spirit where truth abides. There are no other guides but these to choose between, and no other outcomes possible as a result of your choice, but the fear that the ego always engenders, and the love that the Holy Spirit always offers to replace it. Thus, it must be that your function is established by God through his voice, or is made by the ego, which you have made to replace him. Which is true? Unless God gave your function to you, it must be the gift of the ego. Does the ego really have gifts to give, being itself an illusion and offering only the illusion of gifts? Think about this during the longer practice period today. Think also about the many forms the illusion of your function has taken in your mind, and the many ways in which you tried to find salvation under the ego's guidance. Did you find it? Were you happy? Did they bring you peace? We need great honesty today. Remember the outcomes fairly and consider also whether it was ever reasonable to expect happiness from anything the ego ever proposed. Yet the ego is the only alternative to the Holy Spirit's voice. You will listen to madness or hear the truth. Try to make this choice as you think about the premises on which our conclusion rests. We can share in this conclusion, but in no other, for God Himself shares it with us. Today's idea is another giant stride in the perception of the same as the same, and the different as different. On one side stand all illusions, all truth stands on the other. Let us try today to realize that only the truth is true. In the shorter practice periods, which would be most helpful today if undertaken twice an hour, this form of the application is suggested. My happiness and function are one because God has given me both. It will not take more than a minute, and probably less, to repeat these words slowly and think about them a little while as you say them. My happiness and my function are one. Beautiful. Oh, it's such a joy. It's such a joy to be in the flow of God's love, to accept God's love and happiness. God is happy and the function is happiness. And today I was actually feeling that it's really important to go deeper into the idea of happiness. So I did a search of A Course in Miracles, and I came up with 340 results of happiness. So I think we'll just let some of these quotes from Jesus lift us up today as we go for our happy day. From chapter 5, the introduction, to heal is to make happy. To be wholehearted, you must be happy. A son of God is happy only when he knows he is with God. That is the only environment in which you can be happy. The kingdom of heaven is within. Your past learning must have taught you the wrong things simply because it has not made you happy. The belief that you must have the impossible in order to be happy is totally at variance with the principle of creation. God could not will that happiness depended on what you could never have. You cannot change laws you did not make, and the laws of happiness were created for you, not by you. God wills you perfect happiness now. If you choose to see yourself as unloving, you will not be happy. You cannot be happy unless you do what you truly will. And you cannot change this because it is immutable. The ego believes that to accomplish its goal is happiness. But it is given you to know that God's function is yours, and happiness cannot be found apart from your joint will. Recognize only that the ego's goal, which you have pursued so diligently, has merely brought you fear, and it becomes difficult to maintain that fear is happiness. This course has explicitly stated that its goal for you is happiness and peace. Your first exchange of what you made for what you want is the exchange of nightmares for the happy dreams of love. The text, chapter 14, section 2, the section is titled The Happy Learner. The Holy Spirit needs a happy learner in whom his mission can be happily accomplished. You who are steadfastly devoted to misery must first recognize that you are miserable and not happy. The Holy Spirit cannot teach without this contrast, for you believe that misery is happiness. This has so confused you that you have undertaken to learn to do what you can never do, believing that unless you learn it, you will not be happy. So he's telling us, learn to be a happy learner. If you would be a happy learner, you must give everything you have learned to the Holy Spirit to be unlearned for you. The happy learner meets the conditions of learning here as he meets the conditions of knowledge in the kingdom. The happy learner cannot feel guilty about learning. You do not want either alone, for without both, you do not see yourself as whole and therefore happy. Yet you are whole only in your guiltlessness, and only in your guiltlessness can you be happy. Whenever the pain of guilt seems to attract you, remember that if you yield to it, you are deciding against your happiness and will not learn how to be happy. You are guilty or guiltless, bound or free, unhappy or happy. It is the natural result of choosing right, attesting to your happiness, that comes from choosing to be free of guilt. The joy of learning that darkness has no power over the Son of God is the happy lesson that the Holy Spirit teaches and would have you teach with him. The power that God has given to his Son is his, and nothing else can his Son see or choose to look upon without imposing on himself the penalty of guilt in place of all the happy teaching the Holy Spirit would gladly offer him. Unlearn isolation through his loving guidance and learn of all the happy communication that you have thrown away but could not lose. The happy learners of the atonement become the teachers of innocence. That is the right of all that God created. Learn of his happiness, which is yours. So it's just a song of happiness. We're here to follow the Holy Spirit, extend our happiness, extend our joy. You know, I'm thinking of a Gershwin song, grab your coat and get your hat, leave your worries on the doorstep. Life can be so sweet on the sunny side of the street. The sunny side of the street, we'll say, is the right mind. When you're lined up with God, you are a naturally happy learner. And basically what that means is that you are unlearning everything that you learned from the past. You're emptying your mind of everything you think and think you know, and just coming with wholly empty hands unto God. And you're basically saying, show me. Instead of the movie that says, show me the money, you're saying, show me the happiness. Show me the happiness that is my function. And if happiness and function are the same, my happiness and my function are one. That's our lesson for today, lesson 66. If that's the truth, then it must be that our function of forgiveness is what brings our happiness, that brings our natural state of happiness back into awareness. And that's just simply seeing the false as false. Not pursuing ego goals, not pursuing goals of the future, not chasing down a bunch of self-concept, self-image goals that basically are all temporary. And once you've achieved them, you go, this does not satisfy me. And then the ego is forced to make more self-concept goals and more false roads, more idols to chase, and none of them bring lasting happiness. And that is our goal. Our goal is present happiness. It's not a future goal. So that's a good one to take in, to really embrace, to really digest that my present happiness is all that my life is for. That is the purpose of my mind, to hold in purpose the Holy Spirit's purpose, to walk with Jesus in the present moment, and let the rest just let it go, like the Frozen song. So thank you so much for being on this journey. I am so grateful to be walking it with you and shining and sharing. And let us have a day of happiness, love, and laughter. Let us be skipping along in joy. Let us make a joyful noise today for the Lord. When we're not silent, let's make a joyful noise for the Lord. Let's let our happiness shine and radiate to everyone and everything. Love you. Have a beautiful day. Enjoy.